Hello, welcome to the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I'm Jeff Cranston. Over the next two installments of the podcast, I'll be focusing on some high-impact projects the department wrapped up this month with celebrations with a lot of community and political and business leaders. First, I spoke with Jill Bland, who is the Executive Vice President at Southwest Michigan First, about the completion of a long-awaited expansion of the US 131 interchange with US 131 business route, converting it to a full interchange, complete with new ramps that are open from westbound 131 business route to southbound 131 and from westbound northbound 131 to eastbound 131. This is a really important project in the Kalamazoo area, both to a lot of businesses, current and perhaps future, and to commuters who use that route to get in and out of downtown Kalamazoo. I also spoke with Trevor Block, who is MDOT's Transportation Service Center Manager in Davison, about a project that we built about 3 miles of I-475 from the Flint River to Carpenter Road with an investment of $141 million made possible by Governor Whitmer's Rebuilding Michigan program. Next week, you'll hear about two other projects, the completion of a roundabout at M72 and M22, formerly a signaled intersection of those heavily traveled roads, especially in the summer, just outside Traverse City, and completion of a new bridge on Fruit Ridge Avenue over I-96 and Walker, just west of Grand Rapids, that includes non-motorized connections for the trails there, a big thing for cyclists and people who use those trails for sure, and then some other improvements to help the flow of traffic to the many industries in that area. So I hope you enjoy the conversations. First, as mentioned, a focus on the US 131 business route interchange near Kalamazoo. Before you hear from Jill Bland, we'll play a little sound from the celebration event and State Senator Sean McCann's comments.
This is a win-win-win. I know it's a little overused, but it's so true here. It's a win for our ability to broaden our community's economic development opportunities in this area, thanks to this easier access. It's a win for our transit, our drivability, and our navigation around our community. It ties right into Kalamazoo's complete street strategy, and it's going to bolster the exciting momentum that's going on in downtown and our nearby neighborhoods.
As promised, I'm with Jill Bland, who is an executive vice president with Southwest Michigan First. I always describe it generically as an economic development firm. But Jill, thanks for being here. And tell us first, before we talk about this project, which was celebrated last week with a lot of great comments and participation, talk about Southwest Michigan First and what you do there.
Great. So at Southwest Michigan First, we work with companies that are in the Southwest Michigan area with a primary focus in Kalamazoo and St. Joe counties. But we work with primarily manufacturing, logistics facilities, R&D, medical device, pharmaceutical companies throughout the area. And we really help to retain them in the community. When they have an opportunity for growth, we're going to help them find out all the resources and tools that we can bring to the table to help them grow, add more jobs, increase their investment in the community. And then we also head up an attraction program to bring new companies into the community. We also serve as the Greater Kalamazoo Area Chamber of Commerce. And so we work with businesses of all types in that space, and small, medium, large. Doesn't matter. We want to be there to help companies grow and prosper.
So talk about the priority that infrastructure and specifically transportation infrastructure is for these businesses and why that probably is one of your major focuses.
Sure. As you can imagine, every company that we bring into the community is going to have vehicles of some type, whether it be for the employees that work at the facility or the trucks that need to bring product, both from a supply as well as a completed product out the other door. So we are always, when we're talking with our companies, we're always talking about the road infrastructure, in some cases the rail infrastructure, as well as air service and things like that. So how can we help them move product in and out of the facility, and how can we be most efficient while doing that?
So when you're talking about attraction specifically, how soon do you get questions about that? I mean, would you say that's in the top 5 things, the considerations for people?
Sure, absolutely. It is something that they tend to look at right away. Generally, when we are pitching a site, we've already identified the site and have a great deal of detail about what that infrastructure to support the site looks like. And, we look at what are the unique characteristics of the company. So where does it make the most sense for them to locate? And then when we pitch the site, we provide them with all of that information. But it's usually fairly early on in a project. And it's more and more important these days about accessibility to that infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, so that brings us to the project that was celebrated last Friday, November 7th. You worked tirelessly advocating for this. A couple of lawmakers in the Kalamazoo area helped to get their colleagues on board in Lansing with some special grants to make this happen. So nearly $20 million and I travel this often because I live in Grand Rapids and I have relatives in Battle Creek, and I would sometimes take the business route and cut through Kalamazoo because I hate going a little bit west to then go east on 131 and 94. So talk about why this was so important, this kind of extension and rebuilding or expansion of the interchange, I guess.
Sure. Well, as we noted, this project, my first involvement with this project was back in the late 90s. We brought together a group of businesses in the north side of Kalamazoo, as well as up in the Parchment area, kind of that greater area, to talk about what some of their challenges were. And 131 interchange came up many times. While a lot of them do go north to Grand Rapids, they also wanted to go south, and they didn't like driving through downtown Kalamazoo with their trucks. As well as, I'm sure, the city of Kalamazoo and the residents in between, because they had to drive through neighborhoods, didn't like it either. And so we began the discussion really to take a deep dive into this whole infrastructure challenge. Back 99 was roughly the first time our then Congressman Fred Upton helped by getting some funding for us to do basically a traffic study and kind of a preliminary design of what it could look like and what it might cost. And that's when things really started taking off. During the next 5 to 10 years, we had several companies relocate in the community because of this challenge. Good news is they stayed in the community, and we were able to find them sites that had, stronger infrastructure nearby. But we did also lose a few small ones along the way, and we've had some that have changed names. And so we always felt really strongly that the companies needed to be at the table so that we could have the data that they could provide about the trucks and, again, the employee vehicles and those kind of things. So it was truly 20 years of good conversation between multiple units of government, multiple governmental agencies, both at the local as well as at the state and federal level, and then the private sector engaging with it.
And what you probably learned along the way with your patience and perseverance is that in a state that's been strapped to properly fund transportation infrastructure for decades, everybody says, I know there's no money, but you have to do this one thing, right? And that's kind of where you were at. And you had to say, look, to your folks, you had to say, look, we're working on this. We're going to make it happen. And it's just going to take a while, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly true. And believe me, every time we had a new project or new opportunity come to the table, we researched all of the various funding organizations, tools that we might be able to utilize to help offset the cost of this. So there were many opportunities along the way, and we looked and dug and finally during the pandemic, I mean, here's a good example of where the pandemic paid off. As we were doing virtual meetings, we were getting great participation. We would leave those meetings, everybody would have an assignment of something that they needed to go look at in terms of an infrastructure tool. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, coming out of it, we were able to, through our state legislators, able to secure funding to make this happen. But it wasn't through what I would say would be traditional means for gaining funding for infrastructure.
Yeah, and I think it was just tremendously satisfying last Friday to have so many people come together and
Yeah.
celebrate it and not lament, what it took to get here, but just say, let's look forward and focus on what we have. And um, I appreciate especially the way you worked with Carrie Denbraber, the TSC manager there for MDOT, and her perseverance too, and overseeing this. There were definitely some ups and downs along the way, but I think it's just great. It's too bad Representative Upton couldn't be there because he has always been a real champion, or was a champion when he was in Congress for infrastructure. But
Yep.
it's nice that you gave him a shout out anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, this project took so many people, and the team at MDOT, they were there the entire way through. I thought it was really cool. We had two of the planners that were in place along the way for MDOT at the ribbon cutting. And, again, so many hands made this happen. So you're absolutely right. Shout out to everybody that was there and that participated along the way.
Yeah. So what's looking forward? What do you see as challenges or potential bright spots for the economy in Kalamazoo and St. Joe counties?
Yeah. So, things are looking pretty good. We're really excited what this will mean to the north side. And then, to the north up into Parchment, we do have some industrial properties that we're able to market. And so this really opens that door for new opportunities, new job potential, expansion of existing companies that continue to make investment in the community. But also throughout the rest of the region, we've spent the last couple of years really identifying key sites, again, that were close to the infrastructure that we need to bring in industrial businesses. And we've got some great sites throughout the region that we can market. And so we're very optimistic and really excited about what the future holds.
Well, it'll be fun to watch along the way and see what this particular project was able to kind of kickstart in terms of that development. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Thank you, Jill, very much for taking time to come on and talk about this. And good luck going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Let us know how else we can be a good partner with you all in the future.
Absolutely. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with more Talking Michigan Transportation right after this.
Even with the best planning, backups and traffic congestion can occur during road construction. This can pose hazardous situations for both motorists and construction workers, particularly when drivers are distracted. Motorists are more likely than workers to be killed or injured in work zone-related incidents. Additionally, the leading causes of all work zone-related crashes are distracted driving and speeding. So it's crucial to do your part in ensuring the safety of both drivers and focusing on your most important task, safe driving. Slow down and stay focused.
So I'm back with Trevor Block, who is the Transportation Service Center Manager in Davison, which means he takes in Genesee County. What else is part of your TSC, Trevor?
We've got Lapeer County and Shiawassee County as well.
Okay. So a lot of the population in the greater Flint area, and he was heavily involved in the rebuild of this 3-mile segment of I-475, which is actually part of a larger corridor improvement. But they celebrated last week, as I mentioned, November 7th, a great outpouring of support from the community and from labor leaders, and had the Lieutenant Governor there, among others.
I was really proud to stand just a few miles from here last spring for the groundbreaking of this I-475 rebuild. And to be here just a little over a year and a half later, it speaks to Michigan's commitment to making sure that our roads are safe, to making sure that they are the highest quality in the region.
So Trevor, talk a little bit about the project and the challenges along the way and why you were so happy to be able to celebrate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. So this was a reconstruction project funded through Rebuilding Michigan funds. We didn't know we were going to get this project until that money came along. We always had big dreams for Flint, and knowing that we had a lot of work to do on that I-475 corridor. So, getting those that bond funding to be able to do the work here. One of the best parts is that the condition was bad enough that really anything we were doing, we know we were making a good improvement to it. So it's kind of like a blank slate going into it. We knew we were going to help out the community a lot, and kind of the changes that Flint has gone through over the last few decades. There's a lot of drop off in population and in vehicle miles traveled through the area. So we have a lot of additional infrastructure out there that we didn't need. So we had opportunities to look at right sizing the area, try to bring the roadway down to something more manageable. And I think that goes a long way when you just look at kind of aesthetically too. You have a road that fits. It feels more familiar when you're going through the area. We had opportunities to have bridges that were very expensive and hard to maintain, that really weren't servicing many people, and then had alternate routes available. We were able to get rid of some of that, make improvements to the operations that was just cost effective and made a lot of sense. And I think in the end, the project came out just being a real facelift for the northern Flint area.
Yeah, so when you talk about that right sizing and things that all states are facing really in a challenged funding environment, some states, growth states, are doing better than others, but that's something that we'll continue to have to look at. And like you said, it isn't just about the money, it's really about something that better serves the community. So talk more specifically about that and why you think this is aesthetically better.
Yeah, well, and it's actually a very intimidating process to go into, right? Because you're almost like acknowledging, you're verbalizing that there is a reduction in population and that sort of thing, right? And that can be like a tough the message that comes across. But I think once you get to the finished product, then it makes a lot more sense. So, to have to go out and say, hey, we're reducing the number of lanes because there's not as many people here. There's a lot of discussion around like, oh, what about future growth, stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, but if we don't see it yet, why spend all that additional money for that improvement, right? So, we look at what's most practical and we build for it. And going through this northern section of Flint, you can just the 2 lanes now that we have, there was 3 lanes that extended through a good segment of it, and going down to 2 lanes, you're on the road and you just feel like this makes sense. I mean, it tightens everything up. We were able to improve the shoulder widths out there. It's an area where the curbs have always run immediately adjacent to the roadway, which is always a problem for, number one, for safety, for being something you get hit and lose control of the vehicle. But then it's also an issue for future maintenance down the road. You have limited options when you're immediately tied to the curb and gutter and next to the lanes. Your options for like overlaying the roadway and that sort of thing become limited. So, getting to make those improvements and just having a road that's now more standard, it just feels so much more comfortable going through there, and it just makes sense. It doesn't look kind of desolate, or it doesn't look like there's been decline. It looks like it just fits, and I think that's a great starting point now for kind of moving into the future and just we got that good facelift of the road, and I think it's just going to promote a more positive atmosphere for the area.
Well, looking at the future, I mean, that ties into the safety components that you're talking about and the reasons why in a certain era we had to have lanes built the width they were, and we had to have shoulders such as they were. There are a lot of smart people that think, as we get into automated vehicles, and we're a long ways from autonomous vehicles, but we're adding automated features all the time to make our vehicles safer. If you're a fan of the movie Minority Report and you saw what they envisioned for the future and how vehicles travel very close together safely, you don't need as much capacity. That's part of the idea. And I think we're going to get there. I don't know how many years away. Nobody knows exactly what the future holds, or whether we're going to be doing more multimodal travel and there won't be as many of us in our personal vehicles. But there's lots of reasons to believe that even with a resurgence of population growth, we don't need as much capacity as we did when we were building these things in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It takes some of the risk away, right? That you don't have to worry as much about that future growth, because like you said, I think no matter what, 20, 30 years from now, I think our options are going to be related to either a more efficient roadway or a different means of travel, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when, automatic braking systems, were only on the most expensive luxury vehicles. Now they're on vehicles at all price ranges. Same with, rear assist, same with just anti-lock brakes. That didn't used to be on every vehicle. And that's a huge safety feature. I don't even know if you're old enough to have been taught to pump the brakes when you were on a slippery surface, but
old enough to hear a lot of stories about it. But no, I think my first car had them. Yeah.
So that's great. Talk about some of the challenges along the way. I don't know. You've been involved as a construction engineer on other projects. This one was $141 million. That's pretty big as these projects go. There were some ups and downs, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, if that's the right word, the $140 million wasn't too bad in our recent Rebuilding Michigan timeframe, right? There's been so many big projects that a lot of us around MDOT have had to manage these huge budgets, and with that, it's like every part of work becomes it feels so heavy, every decision you make on the project. But like anything we do, you make a few of those decisions the first time and they become easier. So budget wise, it wasn't so bad. But this project from its beginning has been not difficult, but just interesting to work through, right? We got the Rebuilding Michigan money, and then we started looking at what we were going to do on I-475. And in conjunction with FHWA, it immediately got moved over to a planning and environmental linkages process. So we went through a good year and a half of working with the communities to make sure that whatever we were going to propose was something that was in line with their needs. So it was an extensive effort, very similar to what people are familiar with that occurred down on I-375. We had regular meetings with neighborhood groups. We had steering committees, advisory committees, just reaching out to people on the ground, going to community centers and talking to leaders of communities. And they really gave us a whole lot of insight in that development process that we wouldn't have known just from looking at average daily traffic and condition of the roadway, that sort of thing, kind of our assumptions on the road. We had to really get a feel for what the city needed out of this roadway. And
oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that planning and environmental linkages, we call those PEL studies, and they involve a lot of public involvement, as you said. So have you been involved in a PEL study with this kind of scope previously?
No, I hadn't before. And I was in the design project manager position when this project started. So it was very fresh, but I think we were all kind of up for new things when Rebuilding Michigan started, right? It's like everybody's going to get into something they haven't done before, and we're going to make the best of it that we can. So this came along, and we had a lot of help from Ruth Hepfer and Margaret Barondis when they were, working more closely with us here at MDOT and FHWA, and they led us on the right path there to get started. And it's not the part of it, it wasn't that difficult, right? It was a lot of the things we already did, but now we're doing them more intensively. And then there was the community outreach portion that was much bigger than we're used to. But when really the scope of that is just talking to the people that the roadway matters to, it's not very difficult to get up and do it every day. They have so much information to provide to you.
So you went to college to be a civil engineer, and you focused on engineering and solving problems with engineering solutions. I'll bet you didn't have a lot of classes that talked about how to do that kind of community involvement.
No, not at all. We did not have a working with the public 101 class in engineering school. But I mean, for most people that know me, though, I am pretty chatty as it is. So I didn't mind it too much. But it's certainly a skill. And when though that the end goal is that you're going to provide something for them that's better than what they already have, and that's more in line with what they're envisioning. it's pretty easy to have confidence in what you're doing.
So it had to feel pretty good to celebrate this with all of those political and local leaders. Talk about that celebration and, how it felt to just sit back and hear what people had to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always really enjoyed working in Flint because there's just so much opportunity. We can do so many things, and I laugh at what we do as a profession because I sometimes say we just build roads, we just build bridges. Really, we just do things with rocks. I mean, how impactful can we actually be? But everyone uses what we do on a daily basis too, right? So as simple as rocks are, it makes a huge difference. And in going through and the projects that we still have planned for the area, continuing south on 475 to finish up the corridor, reconstructing it here in the next several years, as well as a reconstruction project on M21 in downtown Flint. We're doing our part. Really, everything that we have in the area, we're coming in and we're reconstructing it, giving it that facelift that they need. And it's going to be so positive. We get a lot of calls that are, why does Flint have the worst roads? Why does everybody else get their roads taken care of instead of us? We get those calls regularly. And
to be clear, those calls come into the various MDOT offices all over the state. Everybody's convinced that someplace else is getting all the money. So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Everyone, what they see most often is what's going to be on their mind. But, this is phase, I'd call it, phase 2. We had a project to the north of the one that just recently got completed. So this is kind of the second one we've completed in the last 5 years. And it's great to see it now. You get off of I-75 on the north end and you start heading down 475. It's a different road than it used to be. And it sets a different tone for the city. And, having the lieutenant governor out there last Friday to do the ribbon cutting, looking at the trades people and the contractor out there as well, and the construction team that was out there, everybody's excited to see this because it's not just kind of a freshened up replace in kind type project where it just looks exactly like it did before. I mean, it really looks nice down there. And it just feels like a true modernization for the area. And the more that I can do of that in Flint, the better it's going to feel.
Yeah, that's really, really nicely said. I think planning and environmental linkages sounds like one of those bureaucratic terms, but in the end, what it really means, the linkages means connections. It means that you're building connections within the community, and obviously supporting economic development, which is very high on MDOT's mission. So what's next for the 475 corridor improvements?
Up next right now, we are just finishing off design of the last segment. It's about 5-mile stretch that hits the remainder from Bristol Road up to the Flint River. And that's going to start off, we're hoping here late spring of 2026 that we'll break ground on that project. And that one's going to take probably 2.5 to 3 years to get finished because it's a long one. There's a lot of changes that are going to be happening, but it's going to be more of the same. There's 3 lanes that go through there right now. We're going to bring it down to 2 lanes and kind of narrow our overall footprint that we have through the right of way because, one of the biggest things we had through there was the connecting communities type of initiative where historic redlining and just the introduction of the freeway really is just split off and segmented the different communities in the area. And you can go downtown and you look across the freeway and there's a vibrant neighborhood across the way, but they have to cross a 3-lane one way and then they've got to go across a bridge over the freeway and then another 3-lane one way. It's 300 feet from downtown to the neighborhood, and you look across, and it seems like a mile. You know what I mean? It's one of those that it really kind of hinders you mentally from making that walk across. And so we're going to narrow down those service drive one ways on either side. We're going to add one of the 5 bridges that go through there, we're going to take traffic off of it, and we're going to make it a pedestrian facility.
Basically.
Yeah, have some some benches and that sort of thing on top of it, and make it more of a place-making area, just to try to encourage that connection between the east side neighborhoods and downtown. And then along with that, we have some infrastructure there that's, like I said, it's not utilized and redundant. There's a ramp that is redundant and it's got a lot of crashes, and we're going to get rid of that one and have everybody get off on the one that's safer, and capacities there for all these changes that we're making. And overall, I hope that we just kind of make it a tighter, less impactful footprint within our right of way, and try to make it more of a community centered area.
Yeah, no, it's a really cool multi-phase sort of project to be part of. So, good for you. Sounds like you're enjoying it.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Trevor. Thanks for talking about this. Congratulations on bringing this one to a close, and good luck with the next phase.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I want to thank my guests, Jill Bland of Southwest Michigan First and Trevor Black of MDOT's Davison Transportation Service Center. Again, next week, I'll be back with a couple other installments picking up on where we are with these project celebrations. It's the construction season draws to a close here in Michigan. I'll be talking about the I-96 Fruit Ridge Bridge replacement in Walker, just west of Grand Rapids. I'll also be talking about a new roundabout that we celebrated at M72 and M22, just outside of Traverse City. You can find show notes and more on Apple Podcasts or Buzzsprout. I also want to acknowledge the talented people who help make this a reality each week, starting with Randy Debler, who skillfully edits the audio, Jesse Ball, who proofs the content, Courtney Bates, who posts the podcast to various platforms, and Jackie Salinas, who transcribes the audio to make it accessible to all.